Welcome to the Turnpike Sports Spotlight. Dave Weishaupt with you. Esports has seen incredible growth over the last couple of years. Seems like every week a huge deal is being done in the esports industry. And the big issue for the industry is how it can expand and allow betting on esports. And recently a report was released by SCCG Management that should be a must-read for anyone who's interested or involved with the esports industry. It's entitled Primer on Esports and Gambling 2023, and we're going to find out all about it because on the line we have the CEO and founder of SCCG Management, Stephen Crystal. Stephen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be here, and an amazing topic, one that we're very passionate about. So I'm excited to kind of get into it with you.
I mean, first off, congratulations on an incredible report. I think every lawmaker and sportsbook operator should read it. I say that because every time I talk to a lawmaker or a sports betting operator, the subject of esports comes up. Is esports, in your opinion, the next big market for the sports betting industry?
Look, we've been active in esports going on 15 years. When we started, it was about learning about the ecosystem, whether it was learning about the games, the publishers, whether it was learning about kind of the broadcast side of things through Twitch, given the fact that young people and even older people were spending so much time viewing content via Twitch.
Yeah.
Whether it was, media companies, whether it was sponsorships or ad campaigns, Taco Bell to McDonald's trying to get close to the demographics by doing things esports related. So we've seen it kind of grow in many different verticals. Sports betting is a natural one for esports, and one of the statistics that we highlighted was that in 2022 the global esports audience was 523 million, projected to be 640 million by 2025. That's a pretty impressive number.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the way you have to look at it is it's a number that fits in there and pales still by comparison to the major sports like soccer and football, the ones that really drive most of the handle. So relatively speaking, it's still a small percentage, but as a growth area year over year and as a future potential, it definitely has the attention of bookmakers going forward.
Well, you mentioned traditional sports. I'm curious, how do you see betting on esports? Should we look at it as different from betting on traditional sports, or should we look at it, do we use a different method of looking at esports when we're talking about betting on it?
I think at the end of the day, the dynamic is very similar. It's a skill-based contest. It's largely occurs through game servers that are monitored and can really, cipher through lots of data. So in that sense, there's some built-in integrity. There's some built-in accountability to the very fact that the nature of the contest is controlled by servers and measuring every activity that happens during a contest. So in that sense, it's got some superior elements. On the other hand, some of the best esports players are underage.
Yeah.
There's also the issue of whether matches are being fixed, and so the whole issue of responsible gaming, of integrity, integrity of the process. These are all issues that regulators are grappling with, and I do think that the technology is there to figure these things out over time, but it's a process.
Yeah,
and we're still at the relative beginning of that process.
Let me ask you. I mean, I've had people on this show talk about esports and betting on esports, but really, yours is the first report that made me think about data, and especially for in-play betting for esports. That kind of, I hit that in your report, and I was like, oh, wow, this is very interesting. Now, for betting and in-play betting also, the collection and presentation of data is crucial, like you said. In traditional sports, we see companies like Sportradar, and they're involved with data, and they just did a deal with the NBA for in-play betting. Would data deals be the same in the esports industry, or will they look a little different?
They'll be similar. We have investments in this exact space, so we invest in companies that provide esports data. I think if you talk to bookmakers who haven't fully embraced esports, they will tell you that they don't trust the data yet. And part of it is just the historical nature of data that comes on the major sports like soccer and football. There just is so much history and track record with the data and the data providers that sports books have comfort offering lines and propositions to casual bettors and sharp bettors alike, spread bettors, etc. In esports, there isn't the same comfort with most bookmakers, but some have been leaders. Betway is one example that comes to mind. Entain, which acquired Unicorn, is another example. And they have embraced the quality of the data as it stands now, and they're willing to invest in a process that will see data improve over time. But I will say that it's not just about sports betting or esports betting in a traditional sense. It's also about fantasy.
Yeah.
It's also about betting on streamers or peer versus peer or skin betting or pool betting or social. So we have to look at the fact that the ecosystem is not just traditional fixed odds betting. It is all the other category of betting that we're seeing proliferate, particularly with younger bettors and with more casual bettors.
You know, what was fascinating to me reading your report were the different types of games that fall under esports. I mean, are there certain types of esport games that lend themselves better to betting and fantasy? I mean, certainly there are first shooter games, multiplayer battle arena games, the traditional sport games. I mean, a lot of times I go to gaming conventions and a lot of times they're demonstrating esports with Madden NFL. But in your opinion, is there one game or a type of game that really lends itself to betting or fantasy? And is there one type of game more popular with the betting and fantasy crowd?
I think that obviously there are some established games that we think of when we think of betting, and we do think of the kind of the Madden, the Madden type games that translate or virtualize sports that we see in real time. So those are the natural candidates for an extension of betting. But in reality, all betting is a form of gamification, and I think almost every esport type video game or skill-based game can lend itself to both gamification in the broadest sense and betting in a more narrow sense. So I take a very expansive view of that, and I think we're seeing it play out. I'll give you just one example that you'd never think was an esport, and that was the phenomenon that was Zed-Run, which we work with at SECG. Zed-Run was an NFT-based virtual horse racing game where you would buy your NFT, train your horse, and then race it for money. You would challenge others, and others could bet on that. We're now trying to navigate the regulatory landscape in the U.S., and in some markets it'll be considered an esport. In some markets it would be considered sports betting, and it would have to go through integrity tests like other sports. But I guess if Zed-Run, virtual horse racing, could be, in essence, kind of a skill-based contest just as an esport is, I think once you get to that expansive view, it really opens up a lot of possibilities in this category.
Now, when we talk about esports, we have to discuss the platforms that are involved with these games. When I think of esports, the first platform I think of is Twitch, and I know YouTube is an important platform for esports. The platforms were important for esports growth and financial success of the esports industry. For the future of esports, and I'm talking about the expansion and the betting industry, do these platforms continue on the same as before, or will they need to change as the esport industry changes? I mean, how critical are these platforms for the future of esports?
Look, great question, Dave. I mean, when you consider that the global esports audience is 523 million, It's projected to be 640 million viewers by 2025, and a large percentage of those viewers are being reached through Twitch. So when you look at it from that statistic, it's amazing the influence that Twitch has. When you consider that on average, a Twitch viewer is spending, as much as 5 hours a day viewing content on Twitch. Just think of that statistic for a moment. That's an amazing statistic. That's why the NFL, when they were looking to expand distribution, they did a deal with Twitch, and that's their fastest growing audience.
Yeah.
Is Twitch. So I guess what I'm saying to you is Twitch is really expanding beyond traditional esports. The issue becomes, how Twitch wants to deal with gambling. And the truth is they've taken a very conservative view, just as most of the publishers have. There's a whole interesting dynamic about publishers, distribution, like Twitch, and where they fit into the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this will have to get sorted out through regulation, through legislation, through negotiation. But I think ultimately, if we look at what's happened with sports and fantasy and sports betting, Disney, which owns ESPN Bet, just did a $2 billion deal to join forces with Penn Gaming. What does that tell you? If Disney can do a $2 billion deal to be ESPN Bet with Penn Gaming across the USA, then I would argue to you that Twitch at some point can be right front and center in terms of the growth of esports betting. That would be my argument.
You predicted my next question. I mean, some of these platforms have policies against betting and gambling. I mean, how challenging will it be for the esports industry to navigate these streaming sites, especially if they won't be allowed to have advertisers or endorsement deals that are in the betting or casino industry? Is that a big challenge for the esports industry?
Look, it is a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned responsible gaming, significant issue when you look at the demographic for esports. Integrity, significant issue when you look at some examples of some scandals that have happened in the past. When you look at things like skin betting, which used to occur with regularity on CS:GO, and some of the discussion around loot boxes, which was big several years ago and still ongoing.
Sure.
There was a lot of concerns about these different products and opportunities being aimed at younger audiences. I guess my view on all this, having been in the gambling industry for 30 plus years, is that ultimately we find a way to harmonize technology and entertainment and what consumers want to consume with good public policy. So we've been able to grow gambling across the U.S. safely to now encompassing most of America. We've grown sports betting to 30-plus jurisdictions in just 5 years. Soon we'll be able to access gaming content online on a real money basis. We do it with social casinos, sweepstakes casinos, all kinds of social offerings that gamify different types of content. And so I guess I don't approach this like a moralist. We tend to find a way to do the things that make good commercial sense, and as long as we don't hurt people in the process, mm-hmm. or we take reasonable steps. So I think it will be no different for the growth of esports.
Well, let me turn my attention to the sports books themselves. What do you see as the biggest hurdle that the esport industry has to overcome in order to convince sportsbook operators to offer it as a betting market in their books nationwide? Does it have to show them it'll be commercially successful?
No, look, I think what sportsbooks operators should be looking for is engagement.
Yep.
I mean, the notion that we're going to have physical sports books in the future where people just sit there with their salami sandwich and drink their beer, that's not the experience that the next generation wants. It needs to be interactive. It needs to be interesting, exciting. It needs to give kind of the instant gratification that the previous generation got playing, one-armed bandits. Okay, so I think sports books as venues will become more interactive, and this is what's great about esports, it can be played anytime, anywhere. It can be played in person, so you could use the venues for in-venue tournaments. You could, in essence, stream contests 24/7, 365 from all over the world, all kinds of content. So there's a lot of diversity. So I see it as being an example of extremely diverse content. Think of an update of the horse racing industry, except instead of racetracks, we're talking about the gaming venues around the world, and we're talking about different games as opposed to, different horses. You can kind of see that it can provide what sports books need to be the types of places people will want to go to in the future. So I do think they're open to it now, but regulators need to get comfortable with more and more offerings, and I think publishers need to get comfortable with their content being used that way, and then I think the rest of the ecosystem, which is the broadcasting side, has to get comfortable. I just think there needs to be an embracing of it, and that's just going to take the time that it takes.
Now, I've talked to lawmakers across this country about esports and betting, and they all seem to be struggling with the concept of formulating rules and regulations on the subject. I mean, one of their big concerns is if the activity is age appropriate, meaning the audience and the players are perceived to be younger than traditional sports, so they're really hesitant about allowing betting on esports. Is that perception correct, and is there anything the esport industry can do to dispel that type of thinking?
Look, I think they are doing. A lot of the operators like Entain, like Betway, those that have really gone all in for esports have joined coalitions to promote responsible gaming. They joined coalitions to promote accountability and, standards to make sure there's not match fixing. As I said to you, you have so much data that's on a server from an esport that actually preventing match fixing and those types of things is easier with esports than with almost any other sport. So there are some silver linings, but it just needs more people feeling like it's going to be a part of their growth. During COVID, a lot of operators saw a spike in esports, and then when COVID was over, people returned to their traditional sports. That's a fact. So those that kind of tried it out during COVID were rushing to implement things, and then when they saw that it went away largely, then they said, well, maybe it's not time yet. So that was the best opportunity we had to see it really take off. And it did make a bump up, but now we're back to kind of a slow grind up. I just think it's going to take, it's not so much technology, it's just going to take familiarity. I mean, the truth is, regulators are having to understand a lot of new technology very quickly, whether it's AI, machine learning type technology, whether it's betting syndicates, whether it's, live casino and the implications for that, different variations of skill-based or peer-to-peer or betting exchanges and syndicates. These are all things that are very heavy topics when you consider that regulators for decades were just worried about whether they're going to open up one more casino somewhere in a state, So things have really multiplied in terms of the issues they have to get on top of. And I think as long as people perceive there's a market there, then the lobbying dollars will go into it. The different not-for-profits will spring up, promoting responsible gaming and integrity. So I think the infrastructure is basically there. It's just, when will it reach a critical mass?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. A lot of my friends who are lawyers work in the compliance field, and their job is the analysis of the data on a betting event. Do you think the traditional compliance monitoring tools and methods will work for esports betting, or do you think things need to change in terms of methods and techniques for the compliance monitors out there?
I would say that the good news about esports, again, because it is so latent and for years has been so tied to being conducted on a server, which records everything. I think it's among the safest
endeavors to regulate. From a compliance standpoint, from all of the issues you would have, it's just a function of getting, I think the biggest issue that I get when I speak to regulators is, because my 14-year-old does it, isn't this only for 14-year-olds? It's really more just not ignorance isn't the right word, but just lack of knowledge about the ecosystem and understanding, your 14-year-old's going to start at 8 and then it's going to be doing it when they're 40. It's that part that doesn't always translate.
Is there a jurisdiction in the U.S. that you really think grasp the idea of betting on esports? I mean, certainly I think Nevada is leading the way in this. I mean, here in New Jersey, there's betting on esports, but it's on a tournament-by-tournament basis. But do you think there is a state in the U.S. that is really leading the way for betting on esports?
Right now, you've got 4 states that have done some aspects towards it. Nevada, you mentioned, New Jersey, Tennessee, and West Virginia. I actually would take the view that of the 2, New Jersey right now is further ahead because they recognize peer-to-peer sports, they recognize skill-based gaming, where Nevada is working on comprehensive esports legislation. Sometimes there are other states, Arkansas, Delaware, New York, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, Rhode Island, Montana, New Mexico, Oregon, Pennsylvania, that are looking at, having some type of regulation around this. I often hear about states like Colorado and Virginia, which are very progressive on crypto and blockchain, as being states that might be really progressive on esports in the future. And as we move to more and more virtualized experiences and Web3 experiences, that really plays in the hand of esports content as well, because it already has elements of that. So I would say there is that there is general momentum. And it's one of these things that even when it does arrive, it's not like it's going to overtake NFL football or even NBA. Or even NHL, it's not going to be on that order, but it's more about what people in a certain demographic are engaging with, which is why NFL rushed to do a broadcast deal with Twitch. It's more about where the eyeballs are. And so in that sense, it needs to be figured out because those are important eyeballs in the future.
Now, you travel a lot and you see how the gambling industry operates in other countries. Is there one country that we should be looking at here in the U.S. to see how esports can be expanded and how the sports betting industry can really get behind esports? I mean, one of the controversial issues you mentioned before was loot boxes, and it's fascinating to see how those are being dealt with in other countries. I think Belgium and the Netherlands, loot boxes are illegal, but is there one country out there that is a good example of how esports can be incorporated into the gambling marketplace?
Look, right now, if you look at Europe, the 2 big markets in Europe are UK and Germany. By far, Germany is the leader for Europe, but Germany is also very restrictive from a regulatory standpoint. If you look at, you don't really have the infrastructure in Africa for esports because of the servers. It's more of a mobile market. I am looking at Brazil as the next big focus for where esports could really flourish in all of these incarnations. So if you want the one-word answer from me, it would be Brazil.
Where do you think the issue of betting on esports is going in this country? In the coming years, do you see more and more states formulating rules and regulations for betting on esports?
100%. I think there's a broader discussion already going on in terms of skill-based gaming and what that means. I think under the rubric of skill-based gaming are things like esports. So I think there's a larger, more generic discussion that's already being addressed in over 17 states in one form or another. And esports as a specific example of skill-based gaming, I think, has had some attention for a while. So I just think you're going to see it, again, every year gain a little bit more strength. It's not going to come with a bang. It's more like a steady rain that's going to build, and fill up the basin one day.
and that's you have to kind of take a long view for it. I think once there is more color, then you'll see the leaders in the marketplace in terms of sports betting and iGaming take a look at offering that type of content on their platforms.
SCCG Management is doing incredible work in the gaming industry, and you guys always seem to be working on something really interesting and really important for this industry. What can we be looking forward to from SCCG Management in the near future?
Look, our focus for the last 2 years has been international growth. Mm-hmm. We pride ourselves in being a global company. While we have a deep reputation in the United States, in North America, based in Vegas, we've focused on emerging regions like Latin America and Africa. More recently, Brazil. We've planted seeds in places like India, Asia, and even plan a trip out to Dubai or the Middle East. So we are thinking globally. We've had a lot of focus recently on niche sports and what I call using technology to democratize sports, return sports to the fans, whether it be in billiards or yesterday it was pillow fighting.
I saw that. I saw you holding up pillows. Like, there's pillow fighting now. It's amazing.
Well, that was featured on 8 on ESPN 8, and it was as popular as cornhole, which was a phenomenon during COVID.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying to you is there's a lot of competition out there to break through. Obviously, the major sports have held audiences for years, but I think I'm always interested in emerging content. I'm interested in emerging jurisdictions, always interested in technology, new betting formats, new technology around micro markets. So what you're going to continue to see from SCCG, we will always be 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of the curve. We'll be working in the metaverse and actually working with companies that are taking bets in the metaverse. We'll be doing things that we can dream about maybe here in America, but we'll be doing them in America before too long. And that's what you can expect more of from SCCG.
Stephen, we're running out of time, but the primer on esports and gambling from SCCG Research is just incredible. I got to tell you, I love the fact that it has an esports betting glossary, which is right now on my computer, and I guarantee I'm going to be referring to it several times in the future. But where can people download it, and give out the website for SCCG Management so people can find out all the great things SCCG Management is doing in the gaming industry?
Yeah, sure, Dave. It's www.sccgmanagement.com. We've done, obviously, the esports primer. We've done primers on Thailand. We're releasing a primer next week on Brazil. We've done it on Asia. We're going to be doing a primer on niche sports next month. Right now, we're offering these primers, which are almost book length, but we're offering them for free because we want to give back to the industry. So I would definitely take advantage. Go to www.sccgmanagement.com, and you can download any of our reports for free and put yourself on a list so you can get notices of future reports as they come out.
Stephen Crystal, CEO and founder of SCCG Management, who just put out the incredible report primer on esports and gambling 2023. Thanks for coming on and talking about it. In my opinion, this is a report that is a must-read if you're involved with or interested in the esports industry. It's going to be a huge issue in the coming months and years, and this report, I think, is so important in understanding the industry of esports and its future, especially in the gambling marketplace. Stephen, as always, thanks for coming on. I can't wait to talk to you again because you always have amazing projects you're working on. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Dave.
That'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time on the Turnpike.